Welcome to the Ward's Way podcast. Today, I am pleased to have with me John Allen, President and CEO of Quantum Marine Stabilizers.
Welcome to the Ward's Way podcast.
Now, talk to me about you, because you and I had this conversation. It was many years ago, but I would love to hear it again. How did Quantum get started? I know that it started in Newport.
Yeah, that's right.
So tell me, how did Quantum...
Newport, Rhode Island. Well, I had a career with Bob Director, which I contemplated was not the best time of my life. So in Newport in the 80s, like 84, 85, there wasn't much else for employment, in terms of, reasonable living. And, if you were in the shipyard business, so, Bob Director was where I was working. And then, there was only a small Newport shipyard, I think, and Williams and Manchester, and a couple of yards. They didn't really pay a whole bunch. And then there was a small outboard marine business nearby. And I kind of liked the idea of, working on outboard engines. So I'd buy an engine, out of the newspaper and fix it up and sell it. And I was buying parts from the outboard place, and the guy goes, "Oh, you ever thought about owning an outboard place?" And I hadn't, but he said, "Well, I'm trying to sell my place. The guy's retiring." So I dabbled a little bit with that about buying it, and I went to work there for a while to see what it was all about, but I rapidly learned the clientele was not for me, When they want to know, can I buy one spark plug instead of two? I'm thinking, okay, not my guys. So I moved on. Anyway, so then there's no really options. Everybody says they have a business plan. I never had a business plan.
Yeah.
I had one foot in front of the other. In fact, I had one foot in a banana peel and the other in the toilet most of the time. I could have gone anywhere, But, I didn't have any of the things that, like your kids talk about today. Dad, did you have a business plan? Did you do this? Did you do that? And say, are you kidding? I could barely get down the road to get a bowl of pasta, on a Friday night. So you just start off like everybody starts off, just like your granddad said he came out of the Everglades is a better thing to do. And I just thought there was something better out there for me. And I had a lot of contacts, friends in the industry, in the yachting industry. So when I first got into boats in like the late 70s, I met a lot of guys, friends of mine, Craig DeFoyer, who's passed away now, AJ Anderson was a captain, Billy Zinzer, a myriad of guys that are, I must say, almost retired at this point. But, people that I knew, Joe Bartram, also deceased, my friend Freddie, deceased. I think more are deceased than actually alive.
That's okay. They were part of your journey.
But yeah, so that's what you do, right? So there you go. And I like stabilizers, so, and I pretty much run the course with stabilizers all the way now. They're for 40 years. We'll be 40 years in business next year. So in July next year, in July 1985, I went down the road in Newport, Rhode Island, and I opened a P.O. Box 1337, and I had a phone number, which was our home phone number. That was it. And I rented a little garage on Bannister's Wharf.
Wow.
Yeah. So anyway.
But it does go to show you, I would say the lesson learned would be that it's not in, like what you're saying, it's not what you know, it's who you know. I mean, it was the relationships that you had built, but you have a reputation of having a very high, superior quality product. And I think that that's been the cornerstone of your success. I see your business culture. You guys have grown and expanded, but you do the very best, and you are on the best yachts.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts on that? Would you agree with that?
I'm one lucky hombre.
But it's your leadership as well.
Yeah. That and Carlos and Pepe's, I loved that place.
Oh my goodness!
But when it first opened, not probably now anymore.
Yeah.
But yeah. Well, I think it's nice to reflect back on certain things and say, we did this, we did that, or we focused on this. But in the end, your money are market driven. So where can you go make the money? where's the money and what's the market? And for sure, I can tell you 100%, it was the likes of my friends, still my friends to this day, if they're still alive, that is, that helped me, all the way along the way. I mean, AJ Anderson bought my first stabilizer. Freddie bought my first crane. Everybody that were my friends, when I had the first of something,
right.
Because we invented, we thought we invented. Nobody really invented anything, but we had ideas and we built things, and there was always a first one, and generally it didn't work. So I thought it would be better to, have my friends have the one that didn't work than somebody I just knew. So, I applied that, relationship to.
And how has technology changed over the years when you say, the first of something, it didn't work, and we can absolutely empathize. I can completely with that, and especially when you're trying something new and there's so much testing and commissioning going on. But how has technology changed? Are you happy with the way technology has gone for you and your products? Has it been a hurdle or something that's been more of something you've embraced?
Yeah, I think, you have to embrace technology.
You have to, correct.
So what we built many, many years ago, in comparison to what we built today, is completely different. And actually, the equipment that we built 30 years ago, the service people in our company now couldn't even work on it. They wouldn't know what to do. They'd be lost.
Interesting. Okay.
So we tried to avoid our own, legacy equipment as much as possible.
You heard it here.
Yeah, we find somebody else to work on it. Oh, well, we know a great guy down the road who can fix that for you.
Yeah, he's definitely.
Things do evolve, and you really you have to embrace technology, and it's not going to work the first time. You got to know that, and you got to keep trying it. You got to be prepared to invest in that. I mean, obviously the biggest invention we had was a zero-speed stabilizer, which didn't exist until 97, 98.
And what is that? Tell me. Tell the listeners what that is.
So before, when we were first, we first repaired stabilizers, then we modified stabilizers, then we built our own stabilizers. But there was no such thing as zero speed. A stabilizer only worked when the ship was moving through the water, underway. And then we had the idea, and I say we, it was not me per se, it was, a rift of people in the company had the idea that if the boat was anchored and, we sort of wagged the stabilizers around at the right time and fast enough, we could, reduce the roll on anchor. And if you sort of were in the late 90s, if you were, in St. Martin and you were on a boat anchored and you were looking at an entire fleet of 50-meter boats, which is pretty much what they were back then, 50-meter boats, they were all rolling. Mm-hmm. I mean, and the owners were trying to have breakfast, and, they couldn't even keep a stick of celery and Bloody Mary, this thing was ejecting, and they were hanging on. And it was clear, really, to anybody who just looked at that, a stabilizer that could reduce that roll and make the boat more comfortable when the boat was anchored would be like a total winner. There was no question about, the market. It existed, So we built the first one. The first one ever built was on a boat called Boadicea, and that was a new construction out of Amels, and it never really worked. But the captain...
And what made it not work? Just was it...
I think just the whole, the controls mostly, but, just the concept and the
maybe the data, it was...
the hydrodynamics that were involved, and the shape of the fin wasn't correct, and the hydraulics didn't have the power to move it, and all these things. So then another guy came along, Mr. Berwin, and he owned a boat called the Maigea, and we had upgraded the stabilizers for him to, underway, did an upgrade for the underway, and we were standing on the bridge, and he was talking about, how bad it was when they were in France, and, and his wife got sick, and they always had to go to the dock, and it cost a lot of money to go to the dock, especially after you paid off the dock master and everybody else. So he said, it'd just be great if I could just, not roll so much on anchor. So I told him, myself and Pete Florence told him that, we have an idea. We've only done it once and we never really got to test it, but we're pretty sure it'll work, and we have a better idea than the first one. And he asked us how much, and I can't remember the number, but, we told him that we could do it for this much, and we needed about 2 months to do it. Mm-hmm. And he bought into it like right there and then, and we did it, and it didn't work. I mean, we went off Fort Lauderdale and we turned on the zero speed, and we got it to work. And then when we got underway, the underway didn't work. So then we get the underway to work, and then the zero speed didn't work. And it was one thing after another. And they were going up to Newport for the summer. So we followed them, to Newport. And Dr. Hans Ooms, who was a professor from the Delft University in Holland, who worked in our company as well, he invented the original algorithm for the zero speed control. And he came over, and we didn't have, these weren't digital controls, you were analog controls, right? So if you wanted to do something, you did it with resistors and up-amps and all these things. So I remember we had to make a filter to filter out a certain frequency in the ship. And we used an oscilloscope to ascertain what that frequency was. And then we went to Radio Shack and we bought every, resistor we could and little tiny green boards, and we took them back to the cruise quarters and we just kept making these things. And we made different frequencies, and I don't know how many they made, probably a dozen. And, we'd turn the zero speed on and the whole boat would start shaking. And then we'd solder one of these little tiny circuit boards in and turn it back on and nothing. Okay, that one didn't work. And then we'd make another one at a different frequency. So we'd say at 3 hertz and at 3.5 hertz and at 4 hertz and at 4.5 hertz. And we kept going like that. And, and eventually, so we knew what the problem was, but it was, today it'd be nothing to fix that. But then it took us better part of 2 days, about 3 rolls of solder, and we're probably all going to have cancer at the end of the thing,
Don't say that.
Smoke going everywhere, and and eventually we'd plug them in and turn back on the zero speed, and the boat started shaking. That one didn't work, and then we put one in, we plugged it in, we turned it on, nothing, didn't shake, and then we had it.
Right.
It was almost like that, like a black and white situation, and then we knew it worked. And we knew that with this special filter, we wouldn't interfere with the ship the performance of the system when it was going underway. And then we did it. And then he went to the Caribbean. So let's say we did the job in April or May, and then he went to New England, and it took us all of that summer to get it to work. And then he went to the Caribbean in November. And he went to the Caribbean, and they pulled into St. Martin or somewhere like that. I'm not sure where, but it could have been the Baths or something down in Virgin Gorda. I believe that was the location. And they dropped anchor and turned on the zero speed, and that was it. And the boat obviously rolled a little bit. It wasn't perfect, but it didn't roll that much. It didn't roll as much as any of the other boats in the area. And the captain said that he received a few calls from other boats saying, hey, you know what? How come you guys aren't rolling? And he goes, I got this thing called quantum zero speed, and they go, what's that? Nobody even knew what it was. And then he said, but when he eventually left the anchorage, pulled up the anchor and backed out, like 2 boats went for the spot.
Oh, they thought it was the spot.
They thought it was the location. And then, and that was a retrofit. And I had pitched it to Fedship and they rejected it. I pitched it to Amels. They pretty much rejected it. And for new construction. And then so I focused on the retrofit guys, So again, you call your friends and you go, hey, I got this thing called zero speed, and if we can get it on your boat, it's going to be awesome on your anchor. So, I teed up maybe 3 or 4 of those guys, and we did these conversions, which you could do quite quickly, and we, refined it and improved it, and we were still working with this analog control. The thing looked like the size of a VCR. It had, knobs, bells, and whistles on it. We didn't know what was going on, and in the back of the thing, it was 42 dip switches and some combination of these switches, and you could get it to work. And it was very spurious to us. There was only one guy really, John Barth, who could actually get the thing to work on every boat because everyone was different. And then we started to work on a new control called the ARC, which was more of a software-based control. So things like this filter, which was later called the notch filter, that looked for frequencies that we didn't want to see.
Right.
We could do that just in software. We could just type in 2.3 hertz and enter, and that was it. But, that came like 2 years later or 3 years later. And then at that time, the Fedship and Benetti and a number of other builders were using these things called anti-roll tanks, which was this like tank inside the ship, and water literally sloshed from one side to the other. But if you could change the frequency of the way the water moved, you could reduce the roll. And that's what boats had. A lot of boats had them. And they were effective in certain conditions. So VedShip said that they preferred their anti-roll tank to an active fin system like what we had, because we had no experience and yada yada. And so we said we go to the model tank and compare ours to, we go to the Marin and all, and we'll make a comparison, our fins and the tank, and we don't mind paying, to show you we could do something. So we did, and we went there, and we pretty much beat them. And then we got, more new construction. And I would say within 2 years, so by, I was like 97 or something like that, 98, by say 2003, 5 years later, there was almost nothing in the 50-meter range that wasn't being built with a zero-speed stabilizer.
Wow.
5 years earlier, there was no zero-speed. So that in itself was, something. And then obviously we came up with all these like ideas later on to improve it, but they're not the ideas that people see. It's like the intel inside. We changed this software, we developed this, and there's all little things along the way that the customer would never see to make it work better and better. And then in 94, I think, 94 or 95, 94, we invented the MagLift zero-speed stabilizer, which we patented, and the patent ran out this year. That's why, it was like 20 years. And then in 96, we patented the XT fin, which is a fin with a foil that remains retracted inside the fin, and it deploys for zero speed, and it improves the performance by 100% or something. So it's a big upper. And that patent expires in a couple of years too.
Goodness.
Yeah. So, but we've since filed other patents. So what we learned is, you've got to try things out. You have to have an idea. You have to go try it. Ideally minimize your exposure, but which is kind of difficult in our industry because, most of your prototypes are actually on somebody's boat, which means that they're expecting it to work. So, or some version of it. So, try everything out. And then even all the way up, we're trying ideas all the time now. Later on in September, we'll introduce our own all-electric stabilizer. So we've been messing with that for a while. We started, because we're I'd say a bit behind the eight ball on that, because there's a number of companies that make electric stabilizers now, and they're in the size range that we're not so focused on, like 45 to 55 or 60 meters. But so we hadn't really delved into it, but we need it, and we did start work on it in 2010 and stop work on it. We worked on it for 3 years, an electric stabilizer. We even got a grant from the state of Florida. We got a grant from the Dutch government, and we did all kinds of ideas we had. And, in the end, we just stopped. And I don't think it was through lack of effort on our part. I just think certain technology hadn't developed at the time, the energy storage and supercapacitors and all these things. So we stopped work, and then we went off in other directions. But then we went back to it 2 years ago and started work on it. And now we have it. And we have I think, a really beautiful product. And, and again, through the efforts of, people in the company that were probably not even born when we first started making stabilizers, right? And they were in, they weren't even in, high school when we invented the zero speed, so, and then these are people in the company now who are coming up with new ideas. So it's a big thing, Ideas is good. And for us at Quantum, the one thing we do, which we just did this year, is we do this thing called a quantum technical conference. And we try to do it every year, but with COVID, we missed it for a few years. And basically, we take all the engineering guys out of Holland, and we take the engineering guys from Florida, and who work together pretty much most of the time. And we go rent a nice house or a venue somewhere. This year it was in Barcelona, and everybody goes there for a week, and they present all their own ideas and what they think the company should do, and technically. And we try to get a guest speaker, somebody outside of our, company who can talk to people about how important it is to develop things. And that's what we promote. So
I think that's very innovative and very freeing. And I can imagine that your employees really like that. I mean, I like that concept that you take them out and just have an opportunity to think and figure out the innovation and how to move forward.
It is. It's a great thing. And you have to have recognition, because lots of people who sit behind a desk and work on all these concepts and ideas, they never really get the recognition, from even within the company, never mind outside the company. So for the company to take those people to a place somewhere and say, hey, we recognize you guys, but we also
Absolutely.
would like something produced, please. Can you come up with an idea?
By the way, can you?
Yeah, by the way. And some of the ideas are completely out there, and we might go, that's a ridiculous idea. And in 3 years from now, we're all looking at the thing going, wow, what a great idea.
Right.
So you just have to, you got to embrace that stuff. But I have to say that because we have two distinct groups of guys, we have the Dutch lads and the American lads, and then we've got a couple of Spanish guys as well. And we've got some super smart guys. I mean, really, we've got, 4 PhDs in the company.
Goodness.
So that's pretty substantial for a small company, who really are, for the most part, are working on theories. And to get all those guys together, we even had because there was so much ethnicity, different groups of, we got the French and the French guy, a Spanish guy, we got an Indian guy. Everybody had to cook a meal while they were at the.
Very interesting.
Of their, their culture.
From their their culture.
So the Dutch guys, I don't know.
Yeah, what did they make? Potatoes?
Bitter balls.
Bitter balls, exactly. And Heineken.
Really good. Oh, yeah, lots of Heineken. We had that there. That was,
That's
free.
a given. That counts.
Yeah, drinking was free. It actually gives you the freedom to think of things if you drink a little bit. So, but yeah, and we got some out of this year's conference. I think we got I don't know the number of ideas, but I'd say there was 4 or 5 different concepts that were tabled that everybody thought were
So is there some level of voting at the end that everybody does a presentation and you're gonna?
Well, everybody has their own presentation.
The most popular survive. The top 5 survive and get pursued, or how does that work?
Well, ultimately, it goes up the.
If you like it, it's good. If not, see you later.
I don't want that one. But, the idea is that everybody can present what they're doing. And, you've got a mechanical guy who's presenting his mechanical gearbox that he wants to build. And he's got a controls guy, there who's commenting on that, but also is thinking, how do the controls work to work this thing? And how can we, and then the hydrodynamics guy who's got to design the fin that goes underneath it. And on it goes. So I think that they're all peers of each other. Everybody sits around and they literally go, oh, this is my idea, and they present it, and then everybody talks about it. And sometimes, the guy who's presented the concept might go, oh, this is a really bad idea. You're right, let's leave that one alone. Or he's going to have some kind of passion towards it. This year, we also brought in Andy, one of our sales guys out of Spain, and to present as well in the beginning, because not to stay for the whole week, but just as a presenter for one day, because also you have to have the commercial aspect, right? So it's great to have all these ideas, but what are these?
Right.
Can we sell them? Are they marketable? Are they too expensive?
Any competition? Is there another patent out there?
Yeah,
sure.
Exactly. So also Andy made a presentation about the marketplace, like where we were in the marketplace, what part of this market we owned, what part of the market we should look to improve in, and what are future growth areas for us, So
what are the future growth areas, can I ask?
Well, yeah. Well, nobody has a crystal ball, right?
No.
But, I think, for us, the path is quite clear that we have to, our growth area is military. It's a long game, takes a long time. We're small guys on the tree, but the potential is massive, but it's you need some deep pockets to run it. The game, you need a second job.
And I don't think people really understand that, because I would say we've dabbled. You have been very successful in the government market, but it is so drastically different. And I think that there's you guys do a very good job of educating yourselves, going to the right conferences, knowing how and who the right contacts are, and how to go through it. But you're absolutely right. The process of securing a contract is years. It can take such a long time to find out what is out there, the procurement, get to know the right parties. Are you a proper, can you be a source? There's so much out there.
Yeah, that's true. There is.
I don't think that a lot of people know that. I think people think that, oh, well, the government can just be one of your customers. It's a whole different world, and how you have to.
Yeah, and companies can't even really, contemplate, like, even internally, their own internal processes, that we do. We don't have any great processes, right? But if you start doing government work, and I'm not saying the U.S. government, it could be any government work, you suddenly have to shift gears a little bit. They have a thing called ITAR, which we have to be somewhat compliant to, and that's basically like a fancy NDA with the U.S. government. So if you're a U.S. company and you want to sell to a foreign government for a military ship, you have to get an approval through the U.S. government to be able to do that, and that can be a bit of a hurdle on its own. And for the beginning, for us, we were rated as an ITAR rated product, not just our IP, but the product was rated for ITAR, which was almost like Raytheon or something, selling a missile. So we basically couldn't sell anything. So we appealed that, and then we got downgraded to IP only. So then products weren't really covered by ITAR anymore. We could sell the products, but our technology and our data became controlled by ITAR. So we could sell our product, but we couldn't tell the customer how good it would do on their boat because that was IP, So
I got you.
So it's more relaxed when when it's only your data that's regulated, and you can get these things called TAAs quite quickly. So obviously we've never applied for a TAA to sell to Venezuela or Myanmar or somewhere like that.
Sure.
Because you're going to get turned down anyway. But everything else we apply for, we get within, 12 weeks or something like that. And it's a known thing. I mean, all the big military manufacturers around the world, they know that U.S. companies have to adhere to ITAR. I mean, like Caterpillar or something like that. So, Cuba's building patrol boats, but they don't have Caterpillar engines.
Right, right.
So that's pretty straightforward. So the military business is certainly something that.
And how did you learn about that? What made you go into the military? You just saw a need, fill a need, started going to a show. Yeah. What happened? Like, how did you get into that?
Well, we were actually repairing old VOSPA stabilizers that were on Coast Guard ships. So we were repairing. The Coast Guard had these older ships called the 110s, which I know Dad Ward's worked on as well. There was a few here, and they built a lot of them, like 130 of these things. And we used to repair the stabilizers, and then we started actually taking a control system, our controls, and strapping it on. So we upgraded the boat, and then from that we got another job with the Coast Guard for the WEMAC class, and we upgraded all of those, and then they turned us on to something else, the Coast Guard. Then the Coast Guard were building some new boats, so we got into that. It's just tripping over the stones in the riverbed.
Right.
It's not like you say, there's no clear path, right? This and that happened, and then I think we had a nice contract with. We started off with Egypt. The Egyptians were building some 100-meter plus patrol boats, and they definitely wanted stabilizers. They weren't so keen on rolling around, and they had heard that the Moroccans had bought these special stabilizers from Quantum that were 0 speed. So that kind of leapfrogged us a little bit. They never bought the 0 speed.
So country networking is kind of happening here.
Yeah. So it's good, and but it's complicated, and you really need we don't have a dedicated military salesperson, but we had them in the past. We've had a couple, and you need that because the whole, understanding what jobs are out there, just finding the work, and you can bid on something and then it just disappears because the government changes their mind. So
they don't have any money to fund it.
Yeah, exactly. And you could put massive effort into a project you're never going to get. So, I've never not bid a yacht job, but in the military, I'd say about 30% of what comes on the, available, you're like, nope, we're not going to bid that.
Right.
Because
so you have a bid, no bid process. It comes in, somebody says, here's an RFQ.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, we look at the RFQ and we see what the ramifications are for us. And are we really going to get it, or are they just fishing for a price or something? And you can't, it's not like you can write a quote, Friday afternoon and they get it Monday morning. You might dedicate 3 or 4 people to working on it. And you have to develop this thing called the ILS as well, the integrated logistics supports for it. And they want all that up front. So you can really, really invest a lot of time. A small company like us, we don't have it. So we have to look at the jobs. And we may have walked away from jobs that we could have got. Who knows? But, we definitely decide if we want to bid. And probably 20 or 30% of the jobs that come along, we don't bid them. Type 29 frigates in England, which, it was always kind of known that it was going to go to Rolls-Royce, but, all the builders, they all wanted to get that second prize. So really it was a price check, and it's a lot to do that. So anyway, but we, like I say, we've been very lucky, and we've done some experimental work for the US Navy. We have a nice contract with the Australian Navy for frigates. And, there's some other great ones on the horizon. They just, the maturity of a job is, might start hearing about it, 2 years ago, and you might get a purchase order a year from now, so you've got a 3-year span of presenting and going back and finding out, did it happen? How many are they building? But the great thing about military work is that it's multiple ships. Mm-hmm. And so you build the same thing multiple times, and then you get the training and the support and all that goes with that. So that's very nice.
Have you had to do any prototypes? I know we had to do that before. If you're offering them a solution, sometimes they call it the first ship of the fleet, prototype, and then they kind of evaluate, and you hope that you end up being the one that's the sole source. But sometimes you can do the prototype, and then they end up saying, well... Yep.
Yeah.
Thanks a lot, but no, thank. We're going to give it to somebody else. But yeah,
we did that. Yeah, we built we built a prototype for the U.S. Navy for a catamaran that they were building, and they built a prototype boat, and we built the stabilizer to go with it. And then later on, they decided to build more of them, but we didn't get the job. So it does happen. And then. Commercially, not military-wise, commercially, we had a job with the Chinese National Offshore Oil Corporation years ago, and it was quite a sophisticated swath design with these, 4 effectors on the boat, and we developed everything, and it was a 6-boat order, and they ordered 2 systems. And they never bought the rest. No. And we never sold them a single part or anything ever again. We did them, we commissioned them, and we never heard back.
So do we think that they just canned the copy? Okay, I was going to say, I was going to give an optimistic, but yeah.
For sure. I mean, that's right. What they do, right? They're masters at back engineering anything. So, of course, you got to know that going in. Right. But we did sell them 2 systems, so that was nice. And we got to develop the thing, and they were very nice people to deal with and everything. They paid on time. But in the end, they didn't buy any more.
Do you think the political climate in our country now is going to be helpful or harmful moving forward on government contracts, let's say early 2025, post-election? I know.
There's no crystal ball on that.
No.
I mean, we're only in a certain segment of the military, right? The military build a lot of ships, yachts, ships and patrol boats and things that don't have stabilizers. So there's only a certain segment. Patrol boats is the segment where we're most akin to, because pretty much anything right now worldwide is built patrol boat-wise from 40 meters to 100 meters is going to have some kind of active stabilizers. So probably 20 years ago, that wasn't the case, but it's definitely the case now. The U.S. government are big promoters of stabilizers because it can reduce crew fatigue. And, they have minimal crew, they reduce the amount of crew. And they do a lot of studies on this crew fatigue and, all these different things that can affect the performance of a crew on a boat. And stabilizers is a major part of that. So I think when you look at the major countries around the world, Canada, Britain, France, Australia, New Zealand, the U.S., of course, Germany, they're all focused on that, and they're all focused on having stabilizers. So I think that market will grow because the whole patrol boat market around the world is growing. It's very, smaller countries, they don't want to approve building a frigate or something, right? But if they say, we're getting a couple of patrol boats, they go, that doesn't sound too bad. They're not as expensive as a frigate. Sure. A frigate sounds like a lot of money. A patrol boat sounds like half the money. The reality is patrol boats are as big as frigates now. And they actually call frigates patrol boats because it just sounds better. But patrol boats...
That's interesting.
Yeah, it's true. It's true, yeah. I mean... 20 years ago, a patrol boat was like 40 or 50 meters.
Right.
Now they're building 100-meter boats. They call them patrol boats. So, I mean, certainly there's some level of interest to the government to present it to the people, in the country that, hey, we're building patrol boats, not, frigates. So we're good with that. But the patrol boat business worldwide is massive. We have a very, very small part of it. And hopefully over time we'll get more of it. But we do have quite stiff competition in that market, and that competition is big. It's people like Kongsberg and Rolls-Royce and, Wärtsilä, they...
Sure.
We're just a small stabilizer company. So, some jobs we don't even get to bid on. They just, there's 20 ships being built and we didn't even know about it, so...
Well, we haven't done as many bids as you, but I feel the same way. Sometimes on the ones that I think that we've put forward that I felt so confident that we absolutely, we are set to win this one is not the one you get. But then the one where you feel like you're up against some of these really huge, big companies that we don't stand a chance, you get. So it depends on what they're looking for.
It does. And it's real, I hate to say it, but it is a political thing. We did have a lobbyist work for us for a while. Then we hired a lobbyist firm to work for us over the years. And certainly you got doors open that we wouldn't have got open. But I can't say any of it really yielded as an individual
Not
job.
necessarily an ROI specifically that were it not for, we wouldn't have gotten.
Yeah. So I do think that the U.S. has a lot of rules about Buy America and Buy American and these things, which a lot of countries don't have. And that's good for U.S. companies like us. And even though, a shipbuilder is not totally restricted, generally, if it's like for the Coast Guard, they have to have a certain amount of U.S. built content, but they're able to have other things, a percentage of the ship they can go out and get other things like a German engine or something like that if they feel it's better. And that's a decision made by the shipyard particularly, or say the Navy or the Coast Guard. But it's not like, all the rudders have to be American or all this. A percentage of the ship can come from, and it could be the steel, So, I think that, when you're a U.S. manufacturer and you want to go towards, U.S. built gear, either commercially too, because that's the Jones Act as well, or if it's military, then you've got that Build America U.S. content, and if you feel that you have a really great product and they're that the shipyards decided to use a foreign product, you can actually file a Buy America Protest Act, which is very easy to file. I've filed a couple with no great results, by the way. But, you can go right to your local senator and they'll help you get started with that. And if you really feel that you have you can present, say, we have a product, it's a better product, it's built in America,
is available.
We can support it, then they'll definitely look at it. And it's... and they've got a fast review policy for that.
And what's it called again? Buy America?
If you see that you've lost a job to a foreign supplier, and for no great reason, like you feel you have the similar technology or better technology or the same or whatever, and you're a U.S. manufacturer, you can file what's called a Buy America Protest Act.
Okay, Buy America Protest Act.
And easy to fill out. It has to be done,
within a time frame.
And on a government level, so you start off with your senator. That's we on 2 occasions we had started off with Marco Rubio's office, and they were very forward about it and explained it. We went and explained to them our situation, so they got an understanding if it was really a valid claim, and then they wrote the protest for us. So it's very. I'm not saying nothing's totally easy with the government, but it's not difficult. As long as you believe that you have a product and you can represent it. Because ultimately, they ask a lot of questions. Can you maintain the thing? What's this thing does? So if you say, well, I've dreamed up this machine, but I never really built it. Right. But I know it's as good as that.
Fly,
it's as good as that one coming out of Germany that they've built it for 20 years. Let's say one thing. But if you have already a track record and you can say, hey, hold on, like, hey, if it's the Coast Guard, in our case, right, and we already had over 85 ships for the U.S. Coast Guard with our gear, and then we lose one, series of ships to a foreign builder, a stabilizer manufacturer that had never sold a stabilizer to the Coast Guard before. You got to ask the question, what's going on, right?
Right.
It's always the question, what's going on. So, anyway.
Well, and it probably gives you an opportunity. I'm a big proponent of this too. If you had to reach out to a senator to do that protest for you, you also get to always make sure their office is educated on what you do and your products and the industry. So when you need that favor, that's their job to help.
It is, and congressmen are great. And a few times I've been to Washington, and you get to go to all the various offices. The door's open. You can walk in, you can introduce yourself. There may or may not be somebody in that office that can talk to you, but they'll usually say, come back at this time, and this is the person you want to talk to or whatever. And I was very enamored by that process.
I agree.
So
and I have found that it doesn't even matter the party, despite the fact that we can all be very much into our own parties or what the party politics are. I will say, you have to work with whoever is your congressperson. Doesn't matter what their party is, they should understand the industry. And I have found that if you sit down and explain our industry and explain how they can be helpful, 100% of the time they try to be helpful.
I agree. I do think, though, that our industry here in South Florida, the marine industry, is undervalued because I don't think local government really know. I'm sure they know, but they can really accept how much of the economy is driven by, 30 or 40 small industries that are located, in shipyards and things in South Florida that attract this massive amount of foreign money that comes in through boats. So it's not, there's loads of people that have, boats that live in Florida and, tied behind their house and stuff. But I'm talking about the boats that come here, the 70, 80 meter boats that drop, $3-4 million in, a month and a half sitting at Rivavitch or Safe Harbor or somewhere like that. And that money just goes out into our economy to the canvas people, the paint people, the electrical people.
And the jobs that are created. Yeah.
And I really always felt that we're undervalued in that respect and, get good representation. Or get better representation, although I know you represent us.
Well, I think it's everybody. I mean, yes, I can go to Washington. You can go to Washington. I was speaking with somebody yesterday, and they were talking about how the city of Fort Lauderdale even gets into this debate over, is it tourism number one and marine number two, but doesn't marine feed tourism? So technically the number one is marine, and so it goes. But I agree with you. Many times people just see a rich person has a boat and they bring it here and they're going to spend some money. No, it's the jobs that are created, and it's my employees buying homes, your employees buying homes, in paying property taxes and all of that economic impact.
It's massive. It's bigger than, I think it's bigger than Ben-Hur, but it's big. It's big. It's bigger than people think. I really do believe that, because there's so much attached to, a boat is like, a little city. This yacht comes into town. It's coming. It's I want to say foreign money, but it's not a U.S. person that bring the boat here.
It's a corporation. It has employees.
And it's got everything right down to crew and supplies, and like National Marine or something that's, delivering, all the coffee pods or something.
Sure.
But it's a massive amount of effort that goes into, to stocking up the ship or fixing the ship. And it's all local. Like that boat sitting in Palm Beach or Fort Lauderdale, they're not calling suppliers in Europe to get stuff. They're calling, U.S. suppliers right here in this town. And the thing that attracts those boats to come here is all this industry.
I agree.
I mean, we always said, Palm Beach is only up the road, but they don't have what Fort Lauderdale has.
No.
And, it's an hour's drive. So, or Fort Pierce or Jacksonville or whatever, South Florida, south of Palm Beach, but Palm Beach and south, all the way down here.
Tri-county is what we say.
It's massive. It's massive. And you can pretty much get anything either repaired or manufactured here for a boat. And you can get it pretty quick too.
Yeah.
And I think that in itself is key. And you see it like places like MB92 in Barcelona. They've got a massive infrastructure of companies around there that support the shipyard. And they didn't have so much of that in the beginning. And now you look at it and it's built up, probably tenfold from what it was 7 or 8 years ago. And that makes the yard more attractive. So the yacht didn't do anything, but all those small industries came to Barcelona and set up shop and started doing things. And then the yacht became, more valuable to the client that's going there because they get everything done. Well, it's the same here. They
Agree.
come into town, they tie up at Pier 66 and they get on the phone and they can get pretty much everything they want.
Well, and one of the things I know that we've been working with is that we'll go to the Caribbean in the winter time before spring comes to say, I know when you leave here, you're going to want to come stop through here, Fort Lauderdale for 6, 8 weeks, maybe less before your summer, that it would be great if you can do and prepare ahead of time, because the days of just, like you said, being able to tie up and make the phone calls, though, with supply chains and some other things, boats do need to make sure that because now there's so many boats here, that they need to make sure that they prepare for those yard visits. But almost all of them, they're all figuring that out now, and they do. They start calling in March and February to make sure that when they show up in May, you are ready. Their parts are ready. So
I can see that. Well, I mean, the crew are far more educated than they were 30 years ago. I mean, the crew on boats 30 years ago, they were just looking for something else to do for a few years. But I mean, the crew on boats today, they're professionals.
Oh, my goodness.
They
and the amount of
trained
training constantly that they're going through.
And they are professionals, and they look at the job like a professional job.
100%.
And they work ahead of the game. They send spreadsheets out of what they want to buy.
Yes.
I mean, I think, companies like National and the other suppliers in this area, they're also a big part because they basically say, you send us your list of what you want and we'll get it for you. And that is massive. If that boat's only coming into town for 3 or 4 weeks, it's a foreign crew, they've got to rent cars, they've got to drive around. But if they can have everything delivered to the boat, that's really something. And not that you can't do it in other parts of the world, for sure.
But when you say everything delivered, I mean, I know that we sell a lot to National, so they're delivering everything from food to an electrical cord and everything in between. Yeah. And that's not an easy business model to constantly keep up with, but this is the place that you can have that service available to you.
And I think it's a great service because if you think about it, the crew's going down the list of things they want, and now they've got to call Wards for this, they've got to call Quantum for that, they've got to call so-and-so for this, they've got to call MTU for this, or they just send a list to National Marine and say, hey, we don't mind paying 5% more.
Time is money.
Yeah, can you get all this? And they do that. So these industries that have built up, companies that built up around this industry right here in South Florida, and it's I don't think you'll see it anywhere else in the world, really.
Well, we're not planning on going anywhere. You're not planning on going anywhere. So
what we need is a big shipyard, though. We need we have really no capacity. I mean, we understand, obviously, Safe Harbor, Rybovich, they have, the floating dry dock, but that's just one boat at a time. Directors in Fort Pierce, they can handle a little bit more, but again, that's way up there. Merrill Stevens, the old Merrill Stevens, RMK now, they have a half decent facility in Miami, but they really don't have a lot going on. I think they could do more there. But if we had a shipyard here where you could pull a 120-meter boat in, or something like what's in Savannah right now, where they can haul, 6, 7, 8, maybe 10 70-meter boats in one go, it would be the single largest boost to our industry locally that we could ever get.
And where should it be?
Well, here in Fort Lauderdale somewhere.
I agree.
Probably on the Dania Canal thing. Cut a piece of that port off, and 100 acres.
We heard it here. Let's just start our campaign. Let's do it.
I tell you,
we need a yard.
One thing
it's happened before.
It has, and one thing I actually also believe is that there's most of the boats that are being built in Europe now and have in the last 5 or 6 years are all U.S. owners.
Mm-hmm.
If
they're going to want to come back this way.
They would. I think that a really high-end shipyard built here from the ground up would get investment money from those types of people, the U.S. owners who already have these big yachts. I don't think there'd be any question those people would invest straight away. You don't need any. There's no government money required here.
Right.
Just need the land, and obviously the correct permitting, and it'd probably take about 5 years to build it. But I would say that could be the greatest step forward, because if you think 30 years ago, people were piling into town because there were 4 or 5 shipyards that could haul, 45-meter boats, which is what the boats were. Everywhere you go up to Bradford, you could get out of the water, you could go to Roscioli, you get out of the water, you go to Merrill Stevens in Miami, directors, and the boats were that size. So it was booming. And now, obviously, there's still all those boats around, plus more of that size. So those shipyards are fine.
Mm-hmm.
But we don't see any of the for us at Quantum, we don't see any of the big stuff. If you think that the last, say, 30 boats that we've done can't even haul out here. And when we do service work, we have to be out of the water, right? So for us,
So where are you doing a lot of your installs?
Well, we don't do so much installation work.
Because you're
It's
doing it
mostly,
with the builders.
Yeah, so
sorry.
it's mostly service work. But, Savannah we're in Savannah all the time because that's one of the few places we can work on a big boat. Jacksonville was big for a while, but that BAE took it over. Now they've sold it. It's all military work. They don't care about yachts. Directors in Fort Pierce, we do some work there because they've got a big lift, and Rivovich on their dock. But most of the boats that that we build equipment for now are bigger than 70 meters, and they're not coming out of the water in Fort Lauderdale. And if we had a shipyard here that was stacking them up like they can in Savannah, it would be completely different. Now, I'm saying that in a selfish way because we need the boat out of the water to work on it. Whereas for Wards or something, it's different because you can work on the boat in the water.
Yeah, but when that boat comes out of the water, there's many things that boat can get done once it comes out of the water. All the bottom work that's done, and for us to be able to do our work too, we can provide temporary power and have the boat or have it connected shore power.
And think of the revenue. I mean, the revenue increase is massive. Not to mention you'd have a shipyard with probably 200 or 300 employees. So and project management and all these things.
So who should we pitch to? We need to get a short list going next season.
Yeah,
next season we'll get to that. But I would agree with you. That's the one thing that I think right here specifically Broward County it would be great to have a super yacht yard.
Yeah, I mean, everybody would be here. If you could come in the port, turn left, turn right, go down the Dania Canal and pull into a dry dock and come out of the water, or a graving dock, or a lift, or whatever.
I agree.
They'd be queuing up for sure. They'd be queuing up. So,
yep. Well, you heard it here.
There you go. We heard it right here.
Thank you for your
Live
time
and
today,
living
John.
color.
Exactly. Thank you for being a guest on our Season 1 Wards Way podcast, and I appreciate your time.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Enjoyed it.